A woman goes into a mall fitting room and people whisper that something under the building is watching. A taxi driver looks in the rearview mirror and sees a woman in white sitting behind him. A baby cries alone in the dark and the whole warning is, "Do not pick it up." A creature leaves half of its body behind before flying into the night. And then there's a real bridge, a huge famous bridge with a rumor so dark that even repeating it feels uncomfortable. So yeah, today we are going into the Philippines nightmare folder. What gets me about Filipino urban legends is that they start in places where you would not expect anything weird. A mall, a road, a taxi, a fitting room, a bridge, a bedroom window. You are not always walking into some old haunted castle with thunder and dramatic music. Sometimes you are just shopping, driving home, or hearing a baby cry somewhere a baby really should not be. Quick thing before we start. These are legends. Some are old folklore, some are rumors, some are tied to real places, and some were denied by the people connected to them. So, not every detail happened exactly the way people tell it. But people really did repeat these stories for decades. They made movies about them, they warned each other, they avoided places at night. That fear clearly stuck around. And the first one is such a perfect mall nightmare. The Robinson's Galleria Snake Man. This is one of the most famous urban legends in the Philippines. It spread especially in the 1990s, and the basic rumor was this. Somewhere under Robinson's Galleria, a mall in Metro Manila, there was a half-human, half-snake creature. Already, absolutely not. And then the rumor gets worse because some versions said this creature watched women through fitting rooms. Other versions said women disappeared. Depending on who told the story, it lived under the mall. A rich family was hiding it, or it was even supposed to be some kind of secret twin. And come on, once a rumor has a mall, fitting rooms, a rich family, and a half-snake man, of course people are going to keep repeating it. One name that often gets dragged into the story is Alice Dixon, a Filipino actress. In the rumor version, people claimed something happened to her inside the mall, but she denied it. The Robinson side denied the story too. Robina Gokongwei also spoke about the rumor years later and said it wasn't true. There's even a version of the story where the rumor may have come from business competition, like someone trying to hurt them all. And honestly, the way this rumor spread is almost as crazy as the Snake Man part, because even when a rumor is fake, it can still make people behave differently. Imagine hearing the story when walking into a fitting room. You know it sounds ridiculous, you know there is probably no snake man under the floor, but then you close the door. You see the mirror, you see the little gap under the wall, maybe there's a vent, maybe the light flickers for half a second, and suddenly your brain goes, okay, but what if? That is so annoying. You don't even have to fully believe the story. It just has to pop into your head at the worst possible moment. And this rumor got so famous that it didn't just vanish, it became part of pop culture. There was even a horror retelling in the Aha segment of Shake, Rattle and Roll 15. Years later, Robinson Galleria also leaned into the joke with Alice Dixon in an ad connected to the legend. That is wild. A rumor that could have scared people away from a mall eventually became something the mall could joke about. But that also tells you how big it was. I think that's why this one feels so weird. You are in a mall, it's bright, busy, full of people, you are trying on clothes, not preparing for a creature under the floor, and then the story puts this awful little thought in your head. What if something is hidden inside a building? Okay, we survived the mall. Now we go to one of the most famous haunted roads in the Philippines. Balete Drive. Balete Drive is a real street in Quezon City, and for decades people have connected it with the White Lady. If you know Filipino ghost stories, you probably know this one. A woman in white, a road at night, a driver alone, a real view mirror. And honestly, that setup is creepy before anything even happens. The legend usually says that drivers, especially taxi drivers, see a woman in white on Balete Drive late at night. In some versions, she stands by the road and asks for a ride. In other versions, the driver only notices her after she is already inside the car. He looks in the rearview mirror and there she is, sitting in the back seat. You don't need much more than that, just the mirror, the dark road, and someone sitting behind you who should not be there. A rear-view mirror at night already feels a little creepy. You glance up expecting headlights, an empty backseat, maybe nothing, and then your eyes finds a woman in white looking back at you. Some versions say her face is injured. Some say she vanishes when the driver turns around. Some say she was a young woman who died in an accident. Other versions say she was harmed by a driver. Like most urban legends, the details shift depending on who is telling it. Balete Drive also had the perfect mood for this kind of story. The street used to have many balete trees, and in Filipino folklore, balete trees are often linked with spirits and strange beings. So even before the White Lady became famous, the street already had that haunted feeling around it. That's also a very interesting media angle here. Some sources say the White Lady story may have grown from a magazine article in the 1950s or from an accident story that got retold and changed. So we don't have one clean origin. There might have been a real accident behind it, or the story may have grown because people kept retelling it and adding little details each time. And after enough versions, it gets hard to know what was real and what was rumor and what someone added later. And after enough people retell it, nobody really knows where the first version ended and the legend began. But people kept repeating it. That's the thing. Once taxi drivers start warning each other about the road, that road changes. Even if you tell yourself you don't believe it, you still drive a little differently. You check the mirror more, you notice the empty seat behind you. You suddenly remember every version you ever heard. There was even a report about someone who worked near the Balete Drive, saying he had never seen the White Lady himself, but when he passed through around midnight or later, he still felt chills and preferred to avoid it. That feels very real to me. It's basically, I don't know if I believe it, but I'm also not volunteering. Honestly, same. I do not need to meet every ghost personally before I respect the story. Balete Drive also became part of Filipino pop culture. There was also a movie Hiwaga sa Balete Drive in the late 1980s, and the street is still one of those names people bring up when they talk about haunted places. For me, the mirror version is the worst, because there's that one horrible second. You are driving alone, the road is dark, you glance up, and someone is already behind you. Now, we go from a road ghost to something even worse, because this next legend uses one of the strongest human instincts. A crying baby, the Tiyanak. The Tiyanak is a creature from Filipino folklore, and the basic idea is cruel in the simplest way. You hear a baby crying somewhere alone, often in the woods or in a lonely place. Your first instinct is to help. Of course it is. A baby crying alone is not something a normal person wants to ignore. So you follow the sound. You find a baby. You pick it up, and then it changes. In the legend, the Tiyanak reveals its form and attacks. Some versions say it still looks baby-like, but with sharp teeth and claws. Other versions describe it as a small, old-looking creature with a wrinkled face, a white mouth, and a strange voice. There are regional versions too. In some areas, it is described as a small being that floats instead of walking. In other versions, it is tied to children who died before baptism or without a name, but that depends on the telling. The last part is important. There isn't only one version. The Philippines has many regions, languages, and local stories, so creatures like this change as they move. But the trap stays the same. You hear crying, you care, you get closer. That is so unfair, because what are you supposed to do? If you ignore the crying, you feel awful. If you follow it, congratulations, folklore just caught you using your own heart against you. There's also a real creepy detail in some versions. The sound of the crying can trick you. A soft cry might mean the creature is close. A loud cry might mean it is farther away. I hate that. Because now even your ears are useless. You hear a baby crying and your brain says, okay, it's over there. Meanwhile, the legend is like, no, actually, maybe it is much closer than you think. No, thank you. The Tiyanak also appears in Filipino horror films, which makes total sense. Visually, it's horrible. A crying baby in the dark already makes people tense. Then you add the reveal that it is not helpless at all, and the whole thing becomes one of the nastiest traps in folklore. For me, the worst part is that little moment where you still think you are helping. A random creature chasing you is simple, you run easy, very clear plan. But a baby crying alone? Your first reaction is not fear. Your first reaction is, wait, someone needs help. And honestly, if I hear a baby crying in the forest at night, I would want to help, yes. But I would also want 12 other people, 3 flashlights, and a priest, maybe a drone, and one calm adult. Not me, I'm not a calm adult in this situation. So if you hear a baby crying somewhere a baby really should not be, the Tiyanak legend gives you one very uncomfortable warning. Be careful who you try to save, because it might be waiting for you to care. And now we go from the crying baby to one of the most visually terrifying creatures in Filipino folklore, the Manananggal. This one is insane, and I mean that with respect. The concept is so specific and so creepy that once you hear it, it stays in your brain forever. The Manananggal is often described as a woman who looks normal during the day, but at night she separates her body at the waist. The upper half grows wings and flies into the dark, while the lower half stays hidden somewhere on the ground. I need a moment. Because now we have 2 problems. The flying half is already enough, but somewhere nearby, the bottom half is just standing there, waiting. That is too much work for one monster. Pick a form and stay in it, please. The name is linked to the Tagalog word tanggal, which means to remove or separate. And yes, that is exactly the nightmare. She separates, flies, hunts, and has to return to her lower body before sunrise. In many versions, the Manananggal is connected to the wider aswang world. Aswang is a broad word in Filipino folklore for different feared beings like witches, vampire-like creatures, ghouls, shapeshifters, and other night things you do not want in your life. The Manananggal is often linked with stories from the Visayas, and places like Capiz, Iloilo, Bohol, and Antique often come up when people talk about aswang lore. The creature is usually said to hunt at night. Some versions connect her with sleeping victims, pregnant women, or newborns. That part can get very graphic in folklore, so I'm not going to drag it out. The main thing is this: she is a night predator, quiet, flying, and looking for people who are vulnerable. But here's the detail that makes this legend so memorable. Her lower half is her weakness. According to the legend, if you find the lower half while the upper half is away, you can stop her from coming back. Some versions say people use salt, ash, garlic, or other protective things. If she can't reconnect before sunrise, she dies. So yes, technically there is a survival plan. The problem is that the plan requires going out at night and finding the lower half of a monster. I'm sorry, but I'm not doing that. if the survival plan is go find the other half of the monster, I'm out. I will be inside, door locked, spiritually supporting the brave people. The Manananggal is scary because you have to think in two directions. You look up for the flying half, then you realize the other half might be hidden nearby. So you look at the sky, then you look at the ground, then you decide maybe sleeping is cancelled forever. And this is just not some tiny internet monster. Fear of aswang beings in the Philippines is old. Spanish colonizers wrote about fear of aswang as early as the 16th century. So when people talk about Manananggal, they are touching a very old world of night warnings, village fear, and stories told after dark. This is why the Manananggal stays in my mind. She looks normal during the day, splits in half at night, hides the lower half and has to get back before sunrise. And if you find that lower half first, that's her weakness. Who came up with this? Because that is so terrifyingly specific. And now we end with a legend that feels different because it is tied to a real bridge. A very famous real bridge, San Juanico Bridge. San Juanico Bridge connects Leyte and Samar across the San Juanico Strait. It is one of the most famous bridges in the Philippines. It is long, beautiful, and often seen as a symbol of connection. Construction began during the Marcos era and the bridge opened in 1973. So, this is not just a creepy place in the middle of nowhere. It is a real public structure. People cross it, people take photo of it. It has history, politics, tourism, and beauty around it. And then there is the rumor. The darkest urban legend around San Juanico Bridge says that blood was used in its foundation. In the most disturbing versions, people say the blood came from children as part of a sacrifice, sometimes connected with the idea of padugo or blood offering. I want to be very clear here. That is a legend. And because the legend involves children, I don't want to treat it like a cheap shock. But the fact that people told the story at all says something about how uneasy big structures can feel in folklore. A bridge is not just concrete and steel, it crosses water and it connects land. People trust it with their lives every day. So when a bridge is huge, expensive, political, and built during a powerful era, people start asking what it really cost. And you can see why people would start building dark rumors around something that huge. Some versions add more supernatural detail. There are stories about a woman involved in the project, a fortune teller, and a river fairy who curses her after the blood offering. In some tellings, the curse appears on her body as fish-like scales on her legs. Again, folklore, rumor, but it shows how the story grew into a full myth around the bridge. San Juanico is also tied to real politics. It was one of the big infrastructure projects of the Marcos era. Some critics called it a white elephant when it was built, meaning a huge expensive project that may not have seemed practical enough at the time. Later, it became a major landmark and a real connection between places. So, the bridge already had weight around it before the scary rumor. You can cross a bridge and think it is beautiful. Then you hear a story like this, and a tiny part of your brain starts wondering what people believed was hidden under it. There is even a short story called The Bridge by Yvette Tan that was inspired by the San Juanico legend and won a fiction prize. So this wasn't just random gossip people forgot about. It even made its way into fiction. And that's what happened with stories like this. Once you hear them, the place feels different. The mall is still a mall, the road is still a road, but now there's something in the back of your mind. If you know the story, some small part of you remembers it at the worst time. And that's what these legends do. They ruin normal things a little bit. Suddenly all of it feels just a little wrong. For me, the scariest one is still the Tiyanak. I can avoid a haunted road. I can decide not to go hunting for a flying monster, which feels like a very healthy choice. I can cross a bridge and tell myself, okay, we are not thinking about that right now. But hearing a baby cry alone in the dark, that would destroy my decision making. I would want to help. So now I need to know which one gets you. Tell me in the comments which one you think is the scariest. And tell me which country I should cover next in this urban legend series. If you want more creepy folklore, scary stories and urban legends from around the world, like the video, subscribe and stay on the weird side of YouTube with me. And tonight, if you hear baby crying somewhere it should not be, maybe don't be the first person to walk toward it.